Welcome. In this video, I will be covering another map analysis. Now, some people may be wondering why. What else is there to cover? Well, as an update and follow-on from Scott Natal's hike, in which he located the sword and tent. Previously, I did cover it, but I failed to give the precise location. But in more recent time, because of Scott uploading a video about maps, I have a better understanding. And I think it's important that I share it with you, my interpretation of the location through Google Earth, as it does reveal something quite interesting. So let's get into the video. Okay, so we're on Google Earth right now, and we'll be looking at Scott Natal's hike route in which he located the sword and tent. Before I continue, I just want to stress that the current direction we are heading is north. Bottom right of the screen, that compass, when you tap it by default, it is north, okay? So, if we zoom in here, you've got the Desert National Wildlife Refuge Centre, a place where people would pass by if they were going on to the M Cave hike route, which Kenny did, Sean did, etc. However, there is a slight difference, because going down this road, is it called Alamo Road? Maybe, but once you get down here, you've got Joe May Road, which you would normally turn off and then go all the way down here, Joe May Road, and then eventually reaching Joe May Canyon, turning left, heading north, and then doing the hike route, going all the way up here. However, that is what Scott didn't do. What Scott did, he passed Joe May Road, carried on going all the way up here, as you can see. And once he got to this spot...
Okay, here we are. Cow Camp Road. This road goes way up in there. And then those hills right there are the black hills or Black Mountain. You gotta go through that canyon. And then you go up where that middle mountain is.
Cow Camp Road. He turned right, so I guess heading east, through the Black Hills Gap, which you can see here. Get a different angle of it. Looks kind of narrow, but you know, that's how Scott got there, by car. And then he followed the road or so, all the way up here. Quite a bit of distance to cover, but in a car, not so bad. And then he got to the parking spot. Now, there's Wagon Wheel Road. He didn't go that way, I don't think. He just carried on going and then reached, like, I guess you could call it the dead end spot before reaching Cow Camp Spring, which I guess is a hiking route, I assume. Now, it's not quite clear, but it does look like a parking spot, that.
This is it. Cow Camp Road. There's a little corral here. It's really old. Look at a waterfall right there when it rains a lot.
So yeah. Now, once Scott Natal has got here, he did go up here. It does look a bit steep, but he did say he went up, you know, slopes and stuff, and went up and over. So it makes sense. One thing to note, it doesn't do it quite justice, the actual elevation and height.
Hey, there's my car. Way down there.
So he carried on going up here. As you can see, it's kind of steep. All the way up. And as you can see on the right hand side, which I guess is a part of Ride Patch Spring, in that green designated area, Scott mentioned about cameras. Now, I don't know where exactly they are, but he did say somewhere within this area, so that's why I've designated it. 2 cameras.
We're up here by the spring by Cow Camp Road. The pipe comes up here. We got a camera right there. And another camera right there. Hello, people.
It's interesting that, because it makes you think, what does it capture? Could it have recorded Kenny Veach? Is there any footage, CCTV, which might have shown him in that area on his final hike? You never know. Anyhow, Scott proceeded onwards, and as he said, he went over and up a mountain or so, which I believe is this one, as you can see.
They're just little caves. Then I came down, walked this little valley.
And then he tracked back down a canyon, which is this one here.
So we're gonna go down this little canyon. That's a big cliff up there. And then around this bend is that canyon that Kenny was walking down in his last video. So we're gonna head over that way.
I'm going to do an overall, viewpoint of it, zoomed out very shortly, and it'll make more sense. So yeah, he carried on and headed this way. So he's going south, I believe. He's going back. And yeah, he's going round here. And then, as you can see, that red spot there, supposedly, is like a rough estimate of where Scott Natal found the tent and sword. Now, I think it's this area here. I might be wrong. It's just because it looks like a couple of rocks. And where Scott was, he did, enter like a small section where there was like rocks, like a rock wall and stuff, where the tent was up against, and then the bamboo sword was under one of the rocks.
There's the tent. Ooh, that's pretty. Looks hiding between the rocks.
So it's either that area or this area here where it's dark. So it is a rough estimate, but this is kind of like where Scott found the sword and tent. Now, if we click that, we are facing north now, okay? Let's zoom out. So that's what it looks like, okay? If we go all the way back down here, Desert National Wildlife Refuge Centre, keep on going down the road, past Joe May Road, keep on going, then turn right off Cow Camp Road and follow the road through Black Hills Gap, and then eventually passing Wagon Wheel Road and reaching the parking spot, then entering Cow Camp Spring. Up and over the hills, there might be slightly different alternative routes to go to, depending on how steep it is. That's what you got to consider. But this is just like a rough version. Eventually passing where the 2 cameras are within that area or so. Maybe they're in a tower, maybe they're high up, low down, who knows. And then eventually going up and over the hill. As you can see, there's elevation. and then heading south down this canyon, and then eventually reaching the Tent and Sword. Now, what significance does this have? Well, as you can see, if we go down, look what is there. The M cave, the covered cave, the cave Kenny passed. Really, the only area we can go off from in terms of what Kenny has described, where he's been, where others have been, and really the only M-shaped cave which kind of looks a bit suspicious. That's all I'm saying. Because it is so close. Now, yes, I think it, 0.4, 0.5 miles? I'll show you the distance and everything in a second. But if we're basing it off the distance from M Cave to where the Tent and Sword was found, roughly, it's not that far off. Now, originally, I thought it was originally here, but it's not. So it makes even more sense that there may be a link now when thinking about it due to the distance between the M Cave and the Tent and Sword found. And it's still heading north, so it still has that theory of Kenny heading north, that idea, which I did cover. Interestingly enough, I did mention about this route previously in one of the videos I did. So now, let's look at the distance. So on Scott Natal's hike, in which he got out of his vehicle at the parking lot up here, proceeded on to his hike, going all the way up here and down here to the Sword and Tent, a total of 1.63 miles covered up to that point. And if you used to round it up, probably about 2 miles, just to compensate for, the terrain, the environment, taking rest, and going over those steep slopes. It's going to take time. So it's just a rough estimate, okay? About 2 miles. So you'd say about 4 miles or a little bit over if he went back the same exact way, okay? Now, if Scott didn't, because I can't remember if he did or not, if Scott then went onto the M Cave and then went through Picture Canyon, exited, and then turned right, heading north again, as you can see, going through Picture Canyon, turning right, heading north, back to the parking lot, will take roughly 3.35 miles of distance from the Tent and Sword all the way down here and then back to the parking lot. Now, I don't know if that's what Scott did. Maybe he just turned back the way he came, which would have been about 4 miles, roughly. But if he didn't, and he went the way I mentioned on screen, round that up to about 4 miles, maybe 5, that might be pushing it, that. Just compensating for Picture Canyon, how it can be a bit steep in areas and a bit awkward. You're looking at about 7-8 miles in total for the whole hike. And that's going to take a fair bit of time. So just wanted to put that into perspective. Now, we need to look at the key distance between the M Cave and Tent and Sword found. Roughly 0.50 miles, which isn't that far at all. And for most part of it, the ground, the terrain does look more flatter in this area compared to other areas. So round about this area or so, and that's where the M Cave, the covered cave, the keyhole is, all that stuff. So it is interesting that because, like I was saying, Kenny Veach has been in this area where the M Cave was. He recorded it. He may have even gone back there again on his final hike. Supposedly he went to the mine shaft. He probably passed by it because that's where his items were found, and he carried on going, maybe heading north. And with these two locations in close proximity, they both make sense. The M Cave, maybe Kenny Veach went back there to have another look. And where the Tent and Sword is, well, it's not that far off and it's heading north, in which Kenny did say, when I was talking about the previous theory about heading north, yes, it's understandable that quite a few people will argue and say, Why would he go north? Or he wouldn't get that far on whatever supplies he's got. Well, as you can see, it's not that far north, is it, from the M cave? So he might have went so far north and then gave up or camped out there and then may have gone further on after that. You never know. But it's very interesting, the proximity, how it's very nearby one another and, you know, in distance of where Kenny would go. Now, let's get on to the theories of who it could possibly be. Starting off with Kenny Veach. Why? As said, it's not far off from the M Cave, a location Kenny Veach previously was at in his video. Maybe he went back to visit. But the question is, why would the tent and sword be onwards though, north? Well, as Kenny Veach said, he might head on north if he doesn't locate the cave. So, if Kenny Veach went to the M cave where he last was, couldn't find it, and then he thought, you know what, I'm going to turn back and then head on north. And maybe at some point, some moment, he decided to camp out. And that's why the tent and the sword was located where it was. Overall, the idea that it could be Kenny's is possible due to the location. It's quite nearby. Now, if it's not Kenny, who else could it be? One theory would be it's the rogue hiker. The mysterious hiker or group of people. Who are them? Well, if we're basing it off the idea of the mine shaft being sabotaged, the brace being removed, it disappearing and not being located, and the ladder being lowered, and if we're talking about the covered M cave in which there was a missing piece of rock, it's been tampered with, the environment has been altered, there is a link between the two, and it could imply that there was another hiker or group of people out there, and possibly due to the location, the tent and sword found, maybe it was them, maybe it's the same people that damaged the mine shaft and altered the covered M cave. And nearby to the M cave, that's where they camped out, as the tent was found nearby, roughly 0.50 miles off the M cave north. So that is another possibility. It makes sense. How many people? Not quite sure. From Scott said a 2-man tent, so it could be 2 hikers, 2 individuals who hiked out, camped out, and then started investigating or sabotaging stuff, so when anyone else arrives, they'll come out hurt. Now, if it's not them, who else? The murderer, the potential murderer of Kenny Veach. Maybe there is an individual who was waiting for Kenny to head out. Now, Kenny did say about him heading out on a final hike or so in one of his posts online, and maybe someone found it, then tracked him, tracked his phone call or his phone messages sent to Sharon about the date, the time of when he was going to go, and then that person or group were already out there waiting to take Kenny out. They're camping out there, they've got items with them, tin cans to feed themselves, and even a concealed bamboo sword which could be used to take Veach out. That is a possibility. Maybe they were waiting for Kenny to pass by, or Kenny was nearby the area looking for the cave, and then the people or the person in the tent got out, slowly stalked Kenny Veach, and then took him out from behind. You never know. Maybe it was a scouting point, somewhere to wait, hide out for the time being, and then once the job was done, hide the bamboo sword under the rocks, cover it a little bit, and then escape, never to be seen again. That is a possibility. But if it wasn't them, who else could it be? Well, it could well be another missing hiker. We look back at Eric the hiker, an individual who supposedly was going to set out looking for Kenny Veach. Maybe that's what his tent was, the remains of him. Don't know where Eric went, and if he actually was in that area, maybe he camped out there, and then whatever happened from there on. If people are ruling out the idea that the bamboo sword isn't Kenny's, then it could well be Eric's, because we don't know what equipment Eric uses. So that could have been his. And then whether he was attacked, ambushed, he had to get away in a hurry, he was being chased, or he simply forgot to take those items with him. Could be the result of why it was left how it was. And finally, a vague theory could be it was just an ordinary person or two that camped out, got lazy, and left the stuff behind. The end. For most part of it, I doubt that. It's got to be someone key, some standout person, because who else would go in that area, especially more north onwards? It was saying most people that have been there, yes, have been to the mine shaft, maybe near the covered M cave, but most have not gone north onwards, nor have camped out there. So it wouldn't be any of theirs, especially the people that have recorded their videos. So it makes me to believe it's either Kenny Veach, the supposed murderer of Kenny Veach, or the rogue hiker group of people. Now, in conclusion, whilst it may be true, there is a lot of mystery, I think this is a key turning point or a key moment to highlight the idea of the snap theory, in which you've got multiple contents, and now there is somewhat a higher chance of links forming and pairs being matched. You've got the mine shaft and the covered cave altered with, and then you've got the tent found nearby in location to where Kenny was and where other people may have been, depending who, we don't know of. So maybe there is some kind of link along the way, like with the two locations, mine shaft, cave, tent, maybe someone hiked out, camped out, whether it was Kenny, whether it was the person going for Kenny, or if it was the person sabotaging the areas. That is just an example of how things can be formed with all these mini subsection mysteries. Not guaranteed, but it's something to branch off from instead of all these dead ends. Try and tie things up. Now, depends what else comes out. I think the next piece of key updates would be regarding the contents that were found at the site, the sword, and I guess the underpants as well. Can't quite remember where exactly they were. I think nearby as well, possibly. And just see about DNA and information regarding that. Maybe it can form a link and then it can tie together who it exactly is. One definite thing is that tent does belong to another human. So yeah, it does belong to another person. or two. The question is who? But I think so far links can be formed and made, and it might get clearer along the way if more items are found. Yes, it all depends to when the tent dates back and items, that is true. But you look at like the cans, they look rusted, they look old. But you know, at the end of the day, you'll ultimately get a better idea once you find out the actual evidence and the DNA, and if you can trace back the dates. And then it'll become clear to who exactly it links to, or the chances of it, who it exactly links to. I think the only other thing to consider is where the tent was found depends if that's where it exactly was pegged and placed, or maybe the wind carried it. That's the only factor. It seemed to be in a shady spot. When I mean shady, I mean the shade from the sunlight. So maybe that preserved it just a little bit longer than, you know, exposed areas. So yeah, that is my conclusion. Maybe we are getting a little bit closer to some explanation of one of the subsection mysteries in the M Cave and Kenny disappearance. We'll see what happens next. That is it for now. Hope you enjoyed the video, and goodbye.